Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good to see all you. Thanks for coming to welcome Senator Kaine back into town. He's been here, I don't know, 2 or 3 times this summer. Very busy man right now. He's been crisscrossing the state, helping out all of our wonderful candidates. Unfortunately, Jennifer Lewis couldn't be here today. We're hoping that she makes it later on this week, so we'll let everybody know. Maybe we can get another crowd together to welcome her. But just want to thank Senator Kaine for all his good work at letting everybody know about the candidates that are out here and spreading the word. A lot of work to do, but 7 more days and we have a chance of making history. Maybe we could turn Warren County blue. Yeah. So everybody come out, help us work, and we'll get the word out. We do need to be mindful of returning Senator Kaine to the Senate and electing Jennifer Lewis as representative.
That's right.
We need these folks as a firewall out there. We got a lot of upset people, a lot of stress out there in the country right now. We don't need important issues turned into cultural issues. We need to talk about real things and real progress that we can make. So anyway, I'll turn this over to Senator Kaine. Thank you, Senator, for all the work you do, and thank you for being our firewall out there in the squad.
You bet. Thank you, Steve. Give Steve a round of applause. Hey, raise your hand if you were on the Warren County Democratic Committee, all right? Or if you've ever been on the Warren County Democratic Committee. Raise your hand. Give everybody a round of applause. This is hard stuff, and I want to thank our Steve and our local leaders. I want to thank Rachel, our owner. Say hi to Rachel, right here at Pavement. Rachel's father-in-law is here too. He's dutifully filming this. Victor, good to see you. And listen, it's really nice to come. I mean, a day like this, who could complain about campaigning on a day like this? It's so gorgeous. We woke up really early in Roanoke after 2 days in western and southwestern Virginia. And today we've done events in Roanoke, in Lynchburg, and Nelson County, at Bold Rock Apple Cidery, if you've ever been there. It's really nice. One of the events I did in Lynchburg, I did with Jennifer, and she told me to tell you guys hi. We did a great event in Lynchburg together. And then I'm going to finish the day in Leesburg with Jennifer Wexton. How about all these cool women that we have, right? And if I can, let me talk about Jennifer in the House. Let me talk about my race, and let me talk about you. And then I'll just mingle and have some fun before we head over for this Halloween event. Jennifer, so we have 4 fantastic Democratic incumbents in Virginia. Don Byard, Donald McEachin, Bobby Scott, Jerry Connolly. They're running really strong races. I feel really, really good about their chances. Done events with all of them. But then it's just kind of sign of the times that in our 7 challengers, we fielded great candidates in all 7 of the races, which sometimes we have a hard time getting a candidate at all because some of these seats are so gerrymandered that it's really tough. But we field great candidates. 6 of the 7 are women. 5 of the 7 are first-time candidates. They are people who have had these really cool lives of service: mental health social worker, Navy surface ship commander, CIA analyst, defense analyst, prosecutor, rural economic development specialist, and they say, well, in 2018, I've got to run for Congress. It's tough, but we need to do it to protect the country. And that's just something that we're seeing all across Virginia and really all across the country. Wonderful public servants stepping up and saying, and I'll even do the hard job of running for Congress. Jennifer, you know, she introduces herself one way, but she's a modest person. She doesn't like bragging. I don't mind bragging about her. So I'm going to tell you why I think she's so great. Jennifer's a mental health social worker. Every family in this country is connected to mental health issues or substance abuse or addiction issues. We're all affected. We're all affected. Now, Jennifer's job as a mental health social worker is to do really 2 things. She advocates for individuals and their families when individuals are getting released from institutions and going back home, going back into their communities. So what that means is she is good at the one-on-one advocacy understanding a person's situation, fighting for them. That's a great trait. But because we don't have enough mental health services, the other thing she understands is she understands the gaps, the system failures. As she's trying to get somebody services back in a community and then they're not there, that's her everyday work too, realizing how much farther we have to go. So you combine that, the passionate advocacy for a person or family, and a deep awareness of our continuing gaps in services and our system failures, she's got something really special that as a frontline social worker, mental health social worker, she could bring to Congress. That would make her very unique in Congress. And the guy that she's running against is almost like the perfect antidote to her. It's a guy who over and over and over again has voted against access to health care, voted against Medicaid expansion, wants to go to Washington to repeal the Affordable Care Act. It couldn't be a clearer choice between somebody who's trying to strengthen and build our health care safety net and somebody who would weaken it. And since health care is the most important thing in anybody's life, other than the relationships they have with the people that they love, that is a stark, stark choice. And I hope you'll do all you can to make sure that Jennifer Lewis comes in and represents the 6. You going to do that? And I've seen some of you in the last week. I've been so impressed when Jennifer and I do an event in Page County at the VFW and Lou Ray, and we fill it out, and there's not one more folding chair you can put up. Everybody is there. Or when we were on the front step in Shenandoah County, out next to the Democratic HQ, and people were spilling out into the streets. I mean, I feel a grassroots energy, so do all you can for her. In my race, I'm running against a guy that I actually know pretty well. We've never run against each other, but when I was governor, he was first elected to the Prince William Board of Supervisors. And you can figure out what you need to know about my race from just looking at the themes of the 2 campaigns. We each had to choose a campaign theme when we started. We each tried to choose a theme that was perfectly suited to who we are as people, to how we've governed in the past, and especially to how we'll govern in the future. The theme that I chose was a Virginia that works for all. It's about Virginia, solving Virginia problems, finding Virginia solutions. It's about work, training the workforce, dignified work, good wage policy, good tax policy, immigration reform, which is about the workforce, pre-K to post-grad, career and technical education, a Virginia that works. But finally, it's the last 2 words in the Pledge of Allegiance, for all. When we ask our kids to say the pledge, they don't stop with liberty and justice, period. Our kids, when we say the pledge at a city council meeting, in the Senate, or in a kid's school, it's liberty and justice for all. We believe in this country that if it's not for all, it's not working. If it's not for all, we got more work to do. We're living in a time where the message from on top is frequently today, it's not for all at all. It's for me, or for a few, or for some. We Democrats believe that it's got to be for all. And I believe in jobs for all, health for all, security for all, education for all, equality for all. And that is, and since my wife and I married 34 years ago, I've been a civil rights lawyer and an elected official at the local, state, federal level. That's been what I have been trying to do in my city, my Commonwealth, and my country. I chose that theme because that expresses who I am and what I want to do. My opponent chose the theme too. Take back Virginia. Take it back from who? Take it back for who? Take it back how far? Take it back where? Take it back why? Take it back why? I have now done this for a long time, and I travel all around Virginia, and every day I meet people who support me, people who are so-so on me, people who don't support me. I talk to them all. But I've never had one Virginian look me in the face and say, Senator, we really need to go backward. I don't meet people who want to go backward. What I think people want to do is go forward and go forward together. And so that choice, a Virginia that works for all, that's optimistic, and it's forward-looking, and it's unifying. And Take Back Virginia is pessimistic and negative, backward-looking, and divisive. If we have learned anything in the last 2 years, hey, if we've learned anything in the last 10 days, we got enough dividers in this country. We don't need to put more dividers in office. We got to put unifiers in office, people who believe in that for all value, and that's why That's why I would love your help. Last point, and maybe I'll take 3 questions and then just go visit. But the last point is this, and this is about you. There's a lot of people who want to see a blue wave on Tuesday night, the 6th. They want to see a blue wave of Democrats getting elected. I'll tell you what I want to see after the tragedies of last week, pipe bombs delivered, some to friends of mine, 11 people slaughtered in a synagogue, and others, including brave law enforcement people, injured. A guy trying to go into an African-American church in Kentucky to kill African-Americans. When the church door was blocked, he goes to a Kroger. He kills 2 African-American senior citizens. One is a woman who has spent her whole career at the VA helping veterans, and the other is a grandfather who was holding on to his grandson's hand when he was killed. When somebody tried to stop the shooter, a white guy tried to intervene and stop. He said, look, we don't have a problem with you. Whites don't kill whites. I'm here to kill these other people. I mean, after last week, I think we need to know that we got to have uniters, not dividers. And I've stopped thinking about a blue wave. What I want to see Tuesday night, I want to see a wave of decency. I want to see a wave of compassion. I want to see a wave of caring, of community, of love. I want to see a wave of like righteousness and justice, you know, from the Old Testament, the prophet Amos. That's what I want to see. Well, and it's not just Virginians that want to see that. People all over this country are looking to see a statement next Tuesday night about who we are and who we aren't, and not just people around the country, people all around the world. Well, I'm here to tell you that the message gets first sent by us. The first polls that close in the United States, 7 o'clock Eastern time, are Virginia polls. So if there's going to be a blue wave of decency and compassion, people are going to see it in Virginia, or they're not going to see it in Virginia. I like being a leader. I really liked it in 06 when we worked so hard and Jim Webb was elected to the Senate. They didn't call it for 2 days, but when they called it, it was that seat that turned the Senate blue. Virginia was leading. I liked it in 08 when President Obama said he was going to try to win Virginia's electoral votes. It hadn't happened in 44 years. But when the AP declared that Obama had won Virginia, it was less than 5 minutes later. They said, well, he won Virginia, now he's won the United States. Virginia was leading. Last year, the work that you did, sweeping the statewide offices, 15 members of the House of Delegates, the most we've picked up since 1872. Virginia was leading. I don't want to be the caboose. I don't want to be the laggard. I don't want to be trying to play catch-up. I like when Virginia leads. And we have an opportunity on Tuesday night, because we're first out of the gate, to send that message that there's a wave of compassion and decency. And I know you're up to it. So to the Warren County Dems and everybody here in the beautiful northwestern part of Virginia, some of you were with us. We had this fantastic canvassing event in Winchester Sunday afternoon. We had hundreds of people standing on the steps of the Cultural Center right there in downtown Winchester on the pedestrian mall. I feel that sense of energy. I think we're going to show it on Tuesday night. So thank you for coming out here to Pavement. You guys are the best. Let's go win, and I'm glad to take a question or two. But first, let's go win. And just please introduce yourself. Yeah.
My name is Lonnie Graham. I've been here in Commonwealth for about 45 years.
Hey, Lonnie.
Lifelong Democrat. My big concern, I think there are enough people like us out here. My big concern is voter suppression.
Yep.
People, I think, are out here want to vote. If they can't get to the polls, and if the gerrymandering problem we all know about, they need to be able to easily get to the polls. We hear about the polls that are closing. It's not easy for so many people to get to the polls. What can be done if their vote can't count?
Yeah. So voter suppression questions. First, let's just say in Virginia we have a Democratic governor, and that means the head of the State Board of Elections is a Democrat, and that means that the legislature can't get through some of the voter suppression stuff that other states are doing. So there are significant challenges in this country. If we get a Democratic House, we can reauthorize the Voting Rights Act that the Supreme Court struck down. And when I say it, I mean it. The Supreme Court gave a real clear kind of a description. They struck down a portion of the Voting Rights Act, but they basically said you can't do this. But they gave a clear roadmap for what you could do. With the Democratic House, we could do it, and that could stop voter suppression moves across the country. So, well, it's some for the good and some for the bad. So, I mean, I'll tell you, in Georgia, if you watch the news, you're seeing a lot about voter suppression in Georgia. However, you're also seeing in Florida there's a ballot referendum to re-enfranchise felons that would add an additional 1.4 million voters. That's going to drive a lot of people to turn out in Florida. So in some states it's getting better, some states it's getting worse. One thing we did in Virginia under Governor McAuliffe, we switched so that every ballot has a paper backup. Nobody can hack into a machine and screw things up. There's a paper backup to enable us to have a count. So if anybody asks, oh, does my vote count? Will it get manipulated? Is it in some machine? No, we've got paper backup, and we needed it last year. We had that recount race in the House that came down to a dead tie, but at least we had the paper backup to prove it. So I think we're in good shape in Virginia, but we do need to, if we can take the House, do a reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act to solve some of the suppression in other states.
What would help change the rest of the state?
Absolutely. You could really do that. I want to take the Senate too. But if you win the Senate with me, that's just standing still. We can advance to taking the House by picking up 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 seats in Virginia. Sir, right here. And then I'll come over here, please.
I'm James Smithland,
Hey, James.
and I've lived here about 30 years. I got a question. I understand about 9 states have legalized marijuana.
Yeah. Yes.
And I was curious how you stand on it,
Sure.
and also if you're interested in releasing prisoners that had minor marijuana.
What a good question. Stand on marijuana legalization. I am the co-sponsor of a bill to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. States would still make their own decisions, but at the federal level. And the bill actually does 3 things, and I'll tell you why I co-sponsor it. The bill would decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. The bill would let anyone out of prison who's in federal prison for a marijuana offense. The bill would also allow anybody who ever had an offense to have their record wiped clean, because that gets in the way when you're trying to find jobs, etc. Why did I sponsor that bill? The co-sponsors are Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, Tammy Duckworth, and me. I think were the 4 that we introduced this bill. I became convinced that of all the things federal law enforcement should be focusing on, we got some really serious issues, and this is not one of them. We don't need to chew up the time of our U.S. attorneys, and we don't need to chew up the time of our federal prison system and our dollars criminalizing marijuana. That's number 1. Number 2, the history of enforcement on these federal laws is extremely discriminatory against minorities. And so why not, we'll let the states make the call. You're right, a number of states have decriminalized, or some have allowed medical marijuana. Let the states be the laboratories like we intended them to be, and we can see whether it works or how it works and decide what we want to do in Virginia. So that's the proposal. And I think actually this is one where we'll get Republican votes, and I think this would be a bill that President Trump would sign. He's already used some of his pardons to do pardons in sort of, hey, that's too much of a sentence for a drug offense. So I think this is one where actually there can be some bipartisanship. In the green shirt right there, and then I'm going to look over this way, please.
Hi, Senator. My name is Glenn Sharp.
Glenn?
Len, no G.
Len,
L-E-N.
okay.
Whom do you look for from the other side of the aisle to lead the healing? We're not going to get it from the top. And the Democrats and the political parlay is that the Republicans have been afraid to step out because there'll be primary. But if we send a message in November that we are a compassionate people,
right,
whom do you look to on the other side of the aisle to step up?
Great question. And just to repeat it for everybody, who do I look for on the other side of the aisle to help us with the healing of bringing us back together? And it's a wonderful question. I'll start off, I'm a little bit sad because my 3 favorites that I work with all the time were John McCain, Bob Corker, who's retiring, and Jeff Flake, who's retiring. And you know, the interesting thing about Corker and Flake, they're retiring because their own party made it too hard for them to stay. They would be they're Republicans. I mean, Bob Corker and Jeff Flake are Republicans. They're not Democrats. But if you could convince them, hey, this is a good idea, they'd stick with you no matter what their party said. They'd stick with you no matter what the polls said. Well, then they did that, or they'd speak up against President Trump when they disagreed, which wasn't often, but when they disagreed, they'd speak up. And when they did, their party made it untenable for them to stay. So it's sad when the other party chases out folks who are willing to work across the aisle, but there are still others. Two, you will not be surprised if you watch the news a lot. Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins are people I work with all the time. we disagree often too, but Susan and I are working on a big Alzheimer's bill right now. Lisa really helped us getting our Virginia tribes recognized, you know, when we did that about 7 or 8 months ago. They're people, again, they're Republicans, not Democrats, but if you convince them on the merits, they're going to stick with you, no matter what anybody says. And they're not name-caller types. They're people who will work across the aisle. Another one I'll tell you, somebody I'm really impressed with, I haven't worked with him as long, he just came in 2 years ago, is Todd Young of Indiana. Very much a Republican. He's a veteran, Marine veteran, Republican. We disagree on a lot, but again, he has been one of the loudest voices in Congress against Saudi Arabian atrocities in the war in Yemen, standing up for U.S. as a provider of humanitarian aid abroad. He's somebody I can work with very closely. Mike Rounds of the Dakotas, South Dakota. Mike and I helped draft an immigration reform bill that we tried to get the president on board with last February. The president wouldn't go for it. But Mike, when we tackle an immigration issue, Mike's going to be critical to that. And I'm not meaning, Lamar Alexander's the other one I should mention. Lamar is my chairman on health, education, labor, pension. If the Dems take the majority, he would be the ranking Republican member, or he'll be the chairman. But he is a guy who was a governor. He knows education. He was the president of the University of Tennessee. He ran a Medicaid program when he was governor, so he knows the health and education issues. And these are the kinds of people that we need. You're right that some of the Republicans, even if they are worried about the president, they don't want to speak out because they worry that the Trump voter will get mad at them. But they're people you can work with to get things done. Can I see, was there one over on this side? Right here. And then we'll just take some pictures. Yeah.
My name is Bruce White. I've lived in Orange County 13 years.
Hey, Bruce.
I have an email from Citizens United introducing me to a bill that Senator Warren is introducing to try to remedy the corporate influence in that bill. I guess my question is, are you prepared to go in response to?
So the question was about a bill that Senator Warren was discussing about a month and a half ago and introduced to try to reduce corporate influence. And to be honest with you, I have been so focused on winning my race and winning House seats in Virginia for Democrats in Virginia that I have not paid that much attention to bills that have been put out there in the bloodstream in the last 4 or 5 weeks. I read a little bit of coverage of it. There were some things in there that I like. I worked together with Senator Warren on the Help Committee. We serve on it together. But we'll definitely, take it up as soon as we get back after the election and take a look. And there are a number of things. I mean, here's an example of something that we need to do that would reduce improper campaign finance influence, but that we have to have at least one Democratic House to do it. Republicans really like the current campaign finance system, including the secret money. The ability to donate money. If you donate money to a candidate, I have to disclose. But if you give them money to a super PAC, they can run 1 million ads on TV, and they don't have to disclose their donors. We have tried to change that. Democrats, we have something called the Disclose Act that would say any contribution has to be disclosed. Everybody's entitled to know who's funding campaigns. Democrat, Republican, Independent. You should have a right to know. We can't get one Republican to co-sponsor that bill in the Senate. Not even one. Even though Republican voters overwhelmingly believe they have a right to know. If we could get a Democratic House, the House would pass that by majority rule, send it to us, and then we would go to try to cobble together enough votes to make it happen. That would significantly reduce both corporate but also just the over-influence of wealthy people, because if you have to disclose all the donations, there's a lot of people who only give money because they can figure out a way to do it so that it's not disclosed. If it all has to be disclosed, it would be a very powerful reform. So that's one example of something I agree with that we could do, and I'm glad to take a look at Senator Warren's bill. Hey, listen, Warren County Dems front. Well, okay, I'm going to go one more right here in the green.
My name is Mary Robinson.
Hey, Mary.
And for 40 years, I've had I've used community services boards.
Yep.
And in that time, I've been on 2 different boards as a consumer. I have seen them decline in the past 5, 6 years so badly that I wonder if you know anything about them, if you are aware of the decline that is going on with them. They are kind of a special service, and they don't seem to really accommodate appropriately the specialness of its service.
And it's Mary.
Yes.
So let me just repeat Mary's question. Mary was asking about the community service boards, and she's been very connected with the community service boards here, has seen a decline, I gather, in funding and support for community service boards, and maybe even in quality and the... Okay. Do I know about community service boards? Yes, I was governor, so the community service boards were something that I worked hard on, and during the time I was governor, especially after the shooting at Virginia Tech, we increased support to community service boards, and you help with that, but there continued to be tough budgets, and I paid less attention to state funding of community service boards in Virginia since I stopped being governor in 2010. So I'd actually like to see what's been the path from 2010 to now. In my first 4 years in the Senate, I was not on the Health Committee. I was on Armed Services and Foreign Relations, great committees, but I wasn't doing the mental health and health work. But I did get added to the Health Committee within the last 2 years, and I'm starting to get into it. Much of the last 2 years has been saving the Affordable Care Act and doing opioid addiction work, but right, they do. There's a lot of connection there, but what I need to do is reacquaint myself with like funding levels for the community service boards in Virginia. What has the state been able to do, and what might we do from the federal level to help those services be stronger? And I appreciate you asking that question and your work on community service boards. All right, well, I'm going to stay and just say hi and visit, but let me just say again to the Warren County Dems, I love Front Royal. I'm a big canoeer. I love Front Royal. I love microbreweries. I love Thai food. I love Front Royal. Thank you, guys.
What do you think of the turnout tonight? I'm pumped. I really am. We've had a great day, and of course the weather's beautiful. Front Royal, Warren County, so pretty this time of year. But what you want to see at the end is energy. Polls tell you about preferences, but elections aren't about preferences, they're about energy. So the crowds, early voting, who's registering, those start to really tell you what's going on, and we feel good so far, but we got more work to do.
I met with Jennifer at the local NAACP meeting a couple of weeks ago. She's really a nice personality.
She is.
I think it's great. She bit off a big chew on this election.
It is a tough one because it's a gerrymandered district. It's a big district in terms of the travel.
I think she has some future in the Democratic Party.
Her upbeat spirit, clarity of what she's for, doesn't name call other people. That's positive. I just see audiences reacting to her. Yeah, in the last couple of days we've done events together in Lexington, Roanoke, and Lynchburg just in the last 3 or 4 days. Last week we did Paige and Shenandoah, and I just see her as a real positive force, and people gravitate toward her in a wonderful way.
I noticed during the forum when all the candidates were running, for the 6th district, I thought she was at the bottom of the list, and all of a sudden, man, she pulled it out. So I think that she's really got that personality. She's got, you know how it is, it's the whole package. It's not just one thing.
It's, you can be a good public servant, which she is. You don't automatically know whether somebody will be a good candidate or not. And then somebody gets on the campaign trail, it's like, now that's the person we want. And so she did a good job, and she is doing a good job. So, please.
I feel like I'm good. I feel like I know a lot about it.
Great. So
I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, now you're holding the mic. Do you have a question for me?
Yeah, right. Yeah. You mentioned your campaign is Virginia for All. What are some things that are dividing Virginians?
That's an interesting question. I mean, look, there are different opinions about what is the next step forward on healthcare. I think everybody wants there to be a next step forward on healthcare. I would say generally what citizens want is maintain the good stuff and the Affordable Care Act and improve, where there's challenges. So people have slightly different opinions, but I think we mostly agree with the challenges are not enough options, and we want to bring costs down more. So if we can give people more options that help drive down costs, then that's a unifier.
What do some of those options look like? What do you think?
So the bill that I have a bill with Michael Bennett of Colorado called Medicare X. The idea would be the agency that runs Medicare, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, CMS, let them offer a nonprofit insurance policy, put it on the exchange. Anybody could buy it if they wanted. Wouldn't be forced to buy it, but you could buy it if you wanted to. Because Medicare doesn't have to cover a profit, pay taxes, return to shareholders, pay fancy salaries, the cost would be dramatically less than private insurance. And so another option, lower cost, What's not to like about that? I think that may be the next step that we would take.
One of the issues here in Warren County, we have one provider, and no one takes it.
Right? Is that right? Wow.
No one
Your debt's
takes
a double whammy.
So you have to drive to Haymarket or Centerville to see a doctor.
Right. Whereas if you had a Medicare policy, Medicare exists in every zip code. So, and again, people could buy that or not, but when you have only one provider, they don't have a lot of incentive to give you a really good deal.
The hospital doesn't take it.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense.
The president is talking about, Republicans are now talking about providing care for people with pre-existing conditions.
I haven't seen it in 6 years. They have been undertaking an effort at every step along the way to repeal the Affordable Care, to strip the protection away. That was why when we had the vote last July, both Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski voted against it. The Republican plan would take away protection for people with pre-existing conditions. So I've never seen them put anything on the table to protect pre-existing conditions. To the contrary, what they've tried to do is take it away.
So this is a new thing that we've been hearing. Has anyone mentioned this at all?
No. I think the Republicans started to do that because they were getting hit by Democrats. You guys, by trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, by voting to do it, you're taking away people's pre-existing condition. And secondly, there's a lawsuit that was filed by many of the Republican attorney generals, including some who are running for Senate and governor right now, to take away the pre-existing condition. So yeah, when that got put on the table, that suddenly they're friendly to the pre-existing condition protection, that was news to us. We sure haven't seen evidence of it.
So is this going to make working on moving forward, is this going to make it easier if they're now talking about this?
Well, it might. I hadn't thought of it that way. I sort of looking at it as they're trying to fuzz it up right before the midterm, but if they're saying now they want to protect pre-existing condition, maybe that could be a building block for a step forward.
I think the voters want it.
Clearly. The things that are the most popular, pre-existing condition, kids stay on family policies till 26, women can't be charged different policies than men, no lifetime caps. Those things are very positive and people want to keep those pieces.
So Medicaid expansion starting up tomorrow.
November 1, yeah.
So how do you feel?
I'm really excited.
How do you think that will affect us statewide?
Well, I mean, first I feel really excited because if we had lost that vote on the Senate floor in July of 2017, there would have been no Medicare expansion. And we saved it by one vote. One vote in the U.S. Senate enabled the General Assembly here to expand to 400,000 people. So the fact that 400,000 people, some of whom have never had health insurance in their life, will now have a Medicaid program so they can go to sleep at night without worrying about if their spouse gets in a car wreck, if their kid gets sick. I feel really good about that. And we got to protect it.
I've got one more.
Yeah.
There are some really tight races around down in Texas.
Yes.
Down in Texas, Senator Cruz has taken some heat for taking time off to campaign in 2016. Has anyone said anything like that to you? Have you felt that same kind of heat?
No. I think in Virginia, there hadn't been a Virginian on a national ticket since 1840. So I think people, they viewed it as, it was a good thing for Virginia. I think part of the reason I was on a ticket, it wasn't really about me, it was that Virginia was really important all of a sudden, and that's good. I think everybody likes it when their state matters and is relevant, and I think Virginia now really matters and is relevant. Hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.